scary stories. Before we get into today's stories, if you're new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's get into today's video. About 2 years ago today, I recently moved to a new city in Canada. I was 21 at the time and single, as I just got out of a shitty relationship, so moving was a fresh start for me. In a new city where nobody knew really except my one guy friend, who we will call Mike. Mike didn't live directly in the city though, but we hung out a lot. Since I was single in a new city, I downloaded Tinder. Everyone my age has this dating app, or hookup app really. I don't usually do dating apps, but I was bored and was looking for a little fun. Remember the I don't do dating apps thing once you reach the end of this story. This is the exact reason I don't ever go on them anymore. So, I get on there and I match with a guy, who we will call Andrew. So I didn't message him first or anything, because I was doing a lot of swiping, and honestly went on with my day doing other things, as I just moved and needed to unpack. So a couple of hours later I check my phone, and I see Andrew has messaged me several times saying hi, complimenting me, and he even sent a funny pickup line. I always appreciate a good pickup line, as I have a good sense of humor about mostly everything, and don't take many things that seriously. Keep this in mind too. So I replied, and we got to chatting. He eventually asked for my number, so I gave it to him. It was fine from there, really. Nothing weird was said, so he asked me out to dinner and a few drinks. I agreed, and we met 3 days later. We met in a public place, obviously. I saw him outside the restaurant leaning on his car. It was a really nice car. He asked me to take a photo of it with the sun setting in the background. I said okay, sure. Thought it was random, but whatever. We go inside and eat dinner and drink a little bit, and it was a really good date. So I invited him back to my apartment to keep the night going, I guess you could say. It wasn't super late, and we were really hitting it off. We get to my door, and I was a little bit tipsy as I drank 3 glasses of wine. I wasn't drunk though, but I kept forgetting my code to my door. So I had it on my phone, and I got us in. The rest of the night wasn't weird at all. I woke up beside him the next morning, majorly hungover, and we obviously had fun the night before. He left and all was good. I really didn't want to pursue anything further, so I texted him and said, "Last night was great, but I'm not looking for anything serious right now." And he freaked out on me saying I was wrong for leading him on, and whatever else was said. Okay, fine, fair. You can have your opinions. That's by all means fine. So I ghosted him. Just didn't really feel like talking anymore after that. As he said degrading and subjective things, I left it at that and moved on with my life, as we all would. About a week goes by, and I'm out running errands to finish the last details of getting my apartment furnished. I come home, and he's sitting in my living room with flowers and a bottle of wine. I was drinking at dinner. I was immediately like, "How did you get in here?" As you need a key fob, and obviously a door code. The door code thing, after I thought about it, did not surprise me. He remembered it, as I had it in and out in my open phone. But the key fob I was confused about, how he got the extra one I have. He admitted to taking it when I was asleep, when he stayed the night. I was really mad someone would do that after not knowing someone for like 16 hours in person, so I kicked him out, and I was a little shooken up. about the situation. I blocked his number immediately after he kept apologizing. I just couldn't forgive him after doing that and invading my home, which is a safe space. Fast forward again to 2 weeks later, I was on a little getaway in Seattle with my friend Mike. I posted Instagram stories on the trip and I forgot until after he followed me. We matched on Tinder. This is a common thing guys my age do on Tinder. So he knew I was gone for a weekend. Mike and I are coming back to my place to drop bags off and chill for a little bit at the apartment. I walk into my apartment with Mike this time, and Andrew was on my couch with a girl. I was completely in shock he got in again. The girl even had the audacity to say, "Who are you and why are you in Andrew's apartment?" I lost my mind on both of them and asked him how in the fuck he got in again. He had no made-up story this time. He just flat out didn't know what to say except, "I didn't know when you'd be back, so I've been staying here with this bitch." Mike was mad as fuck about the situation as I told him all about it weeks ago. I demanded to know how he got into my apartment again. He said he made multiple copies of the key fob after he took it. My heart completely sank and I threatened to call the cops if they did not get out of my apartment and gave me every fob he copied. I was pissed and felt so invaded of my space. About a month goes by and I was still thinking about it every once in a while. He was blocked on every social media I could find him on. I thought he was gone until I randomly saw him places, more and more frequently, like it wasn't a one-time thing. I saw him at least 7 times, and I was in public every single time. The last time, however, I was walking the seawall alone, and it was getting kinda late and dark out. It was about 9 p.m. in the beginning of June, and I stopped to tie my shoe, and when I stood up, he was right there. I fucking panicked because I genuinely felt threatened by him at this point. He kept asking why I ghosted him and didn't accept him coming around anymore, and how I could be so mean to someone who he was so into. He kept trying to grab my arm to talk to me and started yelling. I was in tears because his next moves I had no idea about. Someone thankfully heard and intervened. I told them I was not okay, and they called the cops. He obviously ran, and the police asked me to identify him. I gave them his name, and they couldn't find anyone with that name. So now it felt like me wondering if that was even his name. I remembered I had a picture of his license plate in my phone. He had a nice car and wanted me to take a picture of it with my phone as the sun was setting behind him. Douchey, I know. So I gave them that information, and they told me the plates weren't even registered. So now, I'm mind blown by the whole thing and very confused, even a little worried. They couldn't do a whole lot with what I provided, but they said they would update me if they find anything, and to contact them if he gets into my apartment again, or if I saw him out. I never did, thankfully, but to this day I'm always looking over my shoulder for that stalker. I have since then moved, and haven't seen him again, so to the guy who broke into my apartment on more than one occasion, let's not meet again. I recently had a very scary encounter, more like terrifying encounter. For some backstory, I live in a small apartment complex right outside my campus with some friends. I am also a 20-year-old girl. So all of my friends were always bashing on me for never meeting up with any boys or going out with them. I had gotten sick of it. I didn't want to be the little friend who stayed home and ate pizza while my friends were out on dates with boys. so I signed up for Plenty of Fish. Now, I'm not the type of person who would say yes to any random stranger. They had to be nice looking, they had to have plenty of photos of themselves, and we both had to have at least 2 common interests. So with those rules in my head, I psyched myself up to join the world of online dating. Within a few days, I already had 2 boys I was talking to. One said he was a doctor, kinda hard to believe because he was only 20, and one said he worked as a construction guy, easier to believe. I didn't like the doctor guy. He was lying to me. But on day 1, as I was getting crap from my roommates, the construction guy, who we will call Dan, messaged me on a messaging app we were using and asked if I wanted to go out for a bite to eat. I told my roommates where I was going and who I was with, all the things someone should do so someone knows if you are being abducted. I even had a check-in time so that when my roommates texted me if things were good, I had to say some silly code word that meant that things were good. If I responded another code word, it meant help me get out of this. And if I didn't use words, then she would call the police for help. So I quickly dolled myself up and got ready for my date. I put my hair in a classy bun, leaving strips of it hanging down around my glasses. I put on a nice white blouse and some black pants, and I was ready to go. I jumped in my car and headed out to the restaurant where Dan had chosen. It was just out of town and only 15 minutes drive from my apartment. Arrived at the restaurant and saw him almost immediately. He was wearing nice clothes and he looked like his photos. He was waiting just outside the restaurant doors for me. His eyes lit up when they saw me. He walked over to me and smiled. We chatted a little bit outside, since it was summer and not cold, and then walked inside. We ate dinner and talked about our life and things like how school was going. I got the text from my friend, but since everything was all good, I sent the code word back. Dan talked about how much he liked his job and things, and all together, it was pretty nice, except for one thing. Dan was boring. He didn't do anything exciting or really talk enthusiastic about anything, and it was boring. It was an average date, and I honestly didn't care to go on anymore. The next day, I woke up to the feeling of my phone vibrating non-stop. I looked at it and realized it was vibrating so much that it had fallen off of my dresser. I almost laughed. And then I saw that all of the messages were from Dan. At first, they were all saying how much fun he had had and that he would really like to go out again. But then the messages took a turn. They got violent and angry that I wasn't responding. It was even in the fucking morning. I was sleeping. I noped out of that situation. I texted him back and said I had been sleeping and that no, I was not going on any more dates with him. I was just about to block his profile on both sites when I got a final message. Watch your back, bitch. At first, I was really creeped out, but then I thought that since I had blocked him and all of my accounts were deleted, he could do nothing wrong. Later that day, I saw a text from a random number telling me how pretty I looked in my blue PJs. I glanced outside just in time to see none other than Dan running down the road. How the hell did he get my number? I thought wearily. I blocked that number and continued what I was doing. Later that night, I fell asleep pretty early and woke up to my phone text alert going crazy. It was from the number I had just blocked. Earlier that day, there were dozens of messages saying how I was going to get it. I quickly showed all of my roommates the messages. They all told me that I should go to the police. But since I was a stupid person, I didn't. I blocked the number again and went back to sleep, but once again I woke up to my phone buzzing. I didn't wait. I jumped in my car and drove all the way down to the police station. Once there, they told me that they couldn't fucking do anything. And just told me to block his number. Nothing happened for a few days. The number stayed blocked on my phone for a while. Then the pictures started. They were pictures of my house, of me in my house, my car, my job. I went back to the police and finally I was able to get a restraining order against Dan. I never received any more messages from Dan again after that. I now never ever use dating websites. So Dan, I hope we never meet again. I met a guy, Brady, on Tinder. He seemed really nice, funny. He was white British, Asian British mixed. It's relevant later. His family was quite well off, and a little showy, which kinda turned me off. I was doing my master's when we met, and he was unemployed, living at home. He made comments that my master's was just in biology. I don't think he liked that I was doing well. He also did a lot of things that I hadn't that could be considered posh, like skiing holidays, fencing, etc., and expressed some disappointment that I wasn't into that. I kinda blew it off. He never failed to mention how expensive his private school that he graduated from 8 years prior was. Also, he was convinced that my closest friend, who he had never met, was racist because he was half white. She was British Asian. I was like, what on earth? You don't know her. She's never mentioned anything like that. Anyway, I'm not mixed, but due to my complexion, a lot of people think that I am, and I was often mistaken for part of his family. He kind of fetishized this. Again, it didn't seem like a big deal, so then I ignored it. Apart from all of this, it was going pretty well for about a year. He got a job in the military, so then we began to do long distance. I needed to find a job, and it wasn't looking good. I needed a visa to stay. This did put a lot of pressure on the relationship. Eventually, I did get a job. I went to visit him at his military base. Something told me, girl, you need to snoop. I did. He was on all of the dating sites and was calling me his ex. Said things like I read a lot, am obsessed with animals, nerdy, and that I can't ski, apparently a deal breaker. All the things I thought he liked about me, but he did not. Left his ass. He tried to get me back, but kinda was like, well, you're an immigrant, which is why he cheated, and left it. Fast forward 11 months. Not a word from Brad. Although I have heard from the grapevine that he had a new girlfriend, it was hard for me getting over him, as I felt bitter that I had stayed in this country for him, but I'm dating someone new. Brad finds out, loses his damn mind. He rings me so much that my phone dies in an hour or two from all the vibrating. Threats interspersed with begging for me back in letters, phone calls, emails, even e-cards. I found out he's been reading all my mail, that he's got my home address and my work address. He sends gifts. He must have gotten his brother to bring back this crisp type I loved from South Africa. There was about 10 packets, and one was open. In it was a USB named Blackmail with nudes of me and a video that was of him crying for an hour and a half. Boxes of sweets, sent a bundle of clothes including underwear. None of this was mine. He made A1 collages from puppy pictures in magazines, the kind of thing I made when I was 8. I've had about 100 written letters or cards. He'd called the guy I was dating, and you can imagine what he said. She's a slag. She's not a virgin, etc. He contacts my mom saying the same thing. I think he'd like the idea that I was a conservative Asian. I'm an Asian, but we aren't a conservative family, and that I'd be disowned. Mom ignored him. He threatens to come to my house, sends a picture of train tickets to where I live. I'm now scared to stay at home, despite my 4 housemates and I are terrified. When his grandma died, I sent a sympathy card to his mom. This was like only a month into the stalking, and I felt bad. At the time, I thought he would get over it. I did like his parents and his nana. He made out like I'd kill his nan because he said he was busy calling me instead of being with her when she passed. He said that he failed military school because of me, and that he would contact my grad school and get me fired from my PhD. He sent the same threatening letters and pleading cards to my office. Many of them said how he'd get me deported. I was a nobody, and he was a British citizen, as if it was like a Nobel Prize, and he had ruined my future. I was there legally. He was obsessed with the idea that I wouldn't get back with him because of his race, and that I wanted a purebred because I liked golden retrievers. He said I was a racist, and that it would come back to haunt me, and I would have no future. None of this was true. I didn't want to be with him, but that was because he was a cheater. I thought he was a racist or weirdly obsessed with my race, and he was harassing the life out of me. I'd done nothing wrong, but I was still terrified. It was back in my parents' home country. This is the kind of thing that could get you fired. I went to London with my dad and family. My sister's boyfriend's sister put up a picture of us on Instagram. She wasn't private. 3 minutes later, Brad had seen it and made a new account to message me saying I'm coming there. So now he's watching my sister's boyfriend's sister, who wasn't close enough to have blocked him. She probably didn't know that this was even happening at the time. Every time I blocked a number or account, he got a new one. I didn't do anything for 6 months. I felt so guilty. I felt bad for his parents, worried he would lose his job, and was scared of him. I felt bad to worry my parents. This was their biggest fear. I'm 10,000 miles away, and some crackhead is after me. Eventually, I started bawling in front of everyone at work. When yet another letter arrived, I was too scared to go anywhere. I was terrified of unknown numbers. My supervisor marched me to the police. I told them everything, and they said, "You have 3 options. A, we do something about it now, but in courts it can take over a year and you'll probably have to see him. B, we call and give him an off-the-books warning. Or C, we don't do shit." I told them to let me think about it for 2 days. I'd tried before to call his parents before, but he always managed to intercept. I found out his dad had gotten a new job through LinkedIn after previously working from home. I called him at the office and told him everything. Well, his parents had thought that all this time we were still together and that I didn't like them anymore, hence why I hadn't come to see them. I said, if there's anything else, I will go back to the police. His dad apologized profusely and said, obviously, I don't want you to go to the police, but I understand and will do my best with Brad. I didn't hear from him for about a year, then sporadically heard emails from him asking for some personal details, probably under the guise that they were needed for his job. You have to disclose X's, and he probably had to explain what happened since I did go to the police. I replied to some but not others. I have communicated probably about 3 times over the last 4 years. Very brief, bare minimum. If the military really did need those details, they could call me themselves. Fast forward. It's now 4 years later, and I'm on holiday with my current partner at my mom's place in my mom's home country. Christmas Day arrives, and there's a beautiful painting of my sister and I from my favorite photo of us, delivered by DHL to my mom's address. It's amazing, and arrived on Christmas Day. We aren't big on gifts, so naturally, now the whole family is arguing about who did the painting and why they didn't admit it. The next day, we're driving to the beach, and I say, I hope it wasn't crazy-ass Brad who sent that painting, and everyone's like, no, don't be silly. It must have been Dad, and he forgot he's done it. Well, 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 joke's on me. A week later, a fucking Facebook message from my mother asking if we got his gift. So crazy, Brad. I hope we never hear from you again. Let's not meet ever again.